Just stick it out, Akagami!
Hey, Yuzuki!
Akamitsu Akagami is a closeted otaku with daddy issues who has managed to keep her diabolical ways undercover to avoid getting arrested. Kind of like that Hawk 2 girl.
Gotta give him that Hawk 2!
After meeting a nun that unlocks his darkest desires, he abandons the modern world and moves into her nunnery to clap all the Big Melon sisters he can find. This anime is the definition of a holy clapping. God, please don't punish me for this joke.
No, God!
Akagami's father was a grade A creep who abandoned his son and went on a mission to clap all the rice cakes in existence. After waking up at his desk, Akagami, who was now a 21-year-old loner, started his day of seclusion and walked around hiding his face from his locals and classmates. Unlike the boys at college who enjoyed drooling over the melons and rice cakes of the female athletes on campus, Akagami had no such interests and turned down their invitations to mixers and other worldly activities. This was largely due to the fact that he was known as a rizzless creep who scared all the local maidens with his hideous looks. To compensate for his depressing loneliness, he hid behind his mantra of holiness and pretended not to want to follow in his father's footsteps. After getting off his night shift, he was headed home when a bale of rice gave him a brutal chiropractic session. The moment his eyes fell on the purple-haired maiden carrying the bales of rice, he lost his hold on reality and ran off to stop himself from committing atrocities that would ruin his reputation. He then spent the rest of the night causing a small earthquake while pounding his miniature eggplant to the thoughts of the purple-haired princess. The next day, he became a changed man who let all his desires run wild and eventually lost his job and perfect record at school. With no option left for redemption, he left school, packed his bags, and got on the next train to a men-only monastery his uncle referred him to. Once he got there, he made his way to the entrance hoping to get a fresh start at a life of discipline, but when he ran into the purple-haired princess at the door, he immediately tried to escape as her inability to keep her clothes on was bringing out the evil he was desperately trying to hide. After introducing herself as Aoba Yuzuki and dangling her melons in his face, she brought him in for tea and a proper introduction. After giving himself an uppercut to control his demons, he ran away from her enchanting aura, hoping to get some air, and fell into a dry well while trying to save a cat. After hitting his head and becoming a love-hungry ghoul, he hunted down the girls at the monastery until eventually getting knocked out by a palm strike. He later regained his sanity and finally got a chance to understand what was going on. Kiki, an F-Cup sister, explained that the monastery his uncle referred him to had become a nunnery, and Yuzuki, who was expecting to see a monk that proposed to her, thought the psychotic otaku was her potential husband, which was why she gave him the melon teas when he first showed up. With the misunderstanding cleared up, he left the nunnery before they could turn him into their love toy.
Stop it. Get some help.
And went to wait for a bus. Yuzuki followed him and tried to get him to change his mind and come live with them as a dedicated servant, but he had already made his decision and she understood. At least that was until she found out that he was the son of Mr. Akagami, who owed them 20 million yen, and dragged him back to the nunnery to begin his new life as a slave that would repay them with his body. The next day, Yuzuki took him on a tour of their rundown nunnery that went broke after his father looted them. As they spoke, her sisters, who were observing the interaction, noticed that Yuzuki was behaving abnormally. The Aoba siblings then decided to have a meeting to discuss Yuzuki's recent drop in brain power, which obviously had something to do with their new slave. What? Kiki suggested a plot to reveal his true otaku nature, and after a unanimous decision dubbed Tsukuyo as the best-equipped sister for the job, the plan was set in motion. The next day, after she caught him defiling Yuzuki with his eyes, she began her slow and painful mental torment that had the otaku barely holding back his evil desires. The only thing that kept him sane was his extra busy slave schedule that had him cleaning every inch of the nunnery. When Yuzuki's school uniform failed to get him to reveal his dark truths, Tsukuyo decided to turn up the heat. After having a nice and relaxing bath, the otaku tried to leave the bathroom and almost made Tsukuyo swallow his plot.
Damn!
Seeing her there, he ran into the tub while she started to reveal her holy assets to him until it became clear to her that she was in danger. She tried leaving and almost took some shelves to the face, but he saved her from the impact and used the opportunity to get a quick water fluid exchange. Just then, Yuzuki, who got her text to come to the bathroom, caught them in the act and told the otaku to leave. With his truest form revealed, he had no choice and left the nunnery to return to his normal life. But since his landlord had already sold off his things and rented out his apartment, he went to live under the bridge. After a couple of minutes of homelessness, Yuzuki found the starving monk and told him that she had simply asked him to leave the bathroom and not to exile himself. He then got a 5 million yen kissing bill from Tsukuyo before they took him back to the nunnery and got him to continue his slave duties. Kurage, the youngest of the sisters, told him about how his presence had started to reduce the collective IQ points of her siblings. But the otaku was a bit more focused on the sisters who were having a bath. As he eventually failed the battle with his demons and opened the door, the sisters made him look like Francis after his loss to AJ. Mia Kristoff, one of the girls at the nunnery who fell prey to the abuse of the Rizzless otaku, was out for blood, and with the Aoba sisters at school for the day, she challenged Akagami to a duel that would end in his castration if he lost. Thinking the angry midget was a weak pushover, Akagami, who wasn't entirely repulsed by the idea of a castration, accepted the duel. But after Mia got Kagura, her humble assistant, to wrap up her enormous melons that held her back and picked up a katana for the duel, the closeted creepshow experienced true fear for the first time. In an effort to save his very pathetic life, he used his only available skill of otaku telekinesis to loosen her melon wraps before knocking her unconscious with his deadly melon grab. Seeing that the hot-headed midget had lost the battle, Kagura presented the Book of Penance for him to choose a punishment, and he chose for the D-Cup Samurai to spend a night in special servitude to him. But knowing the diabolical plans he had for her special parts, she ran away before he could infect her with his evil. That night, the midget samurai, who turned out to be even more sadistic than the otaku, snuck into his room and tried to suffocate him with her melons while Kagura filmed from the shadows. She ended up running away in embarrassment when she realized that he wasn't into her kind of sadistic love play. But after getting to the storage shed, she found him waiting for her and Kagura locked them inside. She decided to give him an explanation for her insanity and revealed that she was born into the Kristoff family, a foreign and wealthy family that believed women were born to be clapping machines. When she tried clapping all the boys in her middle school and became a weirdo everyone was scared of, she left her country and came to join the nunnery with Kagura, who was her only friend, in hopes of creating a new life. Akagami, who had a similar life plan, broke down in tears and told her that they were both closeted creeps. They then spent the entire night doing what they did best until Yuzuki saw Kagura filming the next morning and caught them practicing sweaty evil with each other. After punishing the otaku for his transgressions, Kiki reminded her that she was meant to have her matchmaking meeting, which would decide the future of the temple that very day. Seeing that she was way behind schedule, she bolted with her slave and gave him a crash course about how the temple needed to have a head priest to remain open, and Kiki was only temporarily helping them out. She had to get married to a monk and use his name to officially become a head priest, which would save their temple from permanent closure. After getting to the bus stop a bit too late, she had accepted defeat. But the otaku, who was well experienced in the art of last-minute screw-ups, found a bike and used it to continue their journey until the gas finished, and they ended up hopping inside a truck by accident. After giving her a quick pep talk and getting her to change into a kimono, he somehow managed to get rid of the truck's drivers and ran it straight into a tree at the temple where she was meant to have her matchmaking meeting. After stating her purpose to Saitama's long-lost brother at the temple entrance, she went in to have her meeting while a nun, who thought Akagami was one of the temple slaves, dragged him in to get to his cleaning duties. Kijo Rona, the third son of the Ryokoku temple, was her proposed monk husband for the day, but the miner, who had never been on a date before, had no idea of what they could talk about. To make matters worse, Akagami was right outside the shed assaulting himself because his inner demons were resurfacing and filling his head with images of her plot in a kimono. The nun from earlier then brought him to join her date. As the matchmaker was absent for the day, the jealous otaku immediately kicked off the interrogation and wanted to know what the monk planned to do during his time with Yuzuki. Monk Kijo, who wasn't as divine as he seemed, boldly revealed the diabolical plans he had for the special girl and caused Akagami to have a seizure. While another temple worker dragged the half-dead otaku away, Kijo told her that he knew Akagami was with her through his spiritual detection senses, and he could tell that Kagami had special plans for her. He then rejected her proposal and told her to shut down their broken and slowly decaying temple, as it was foolish of her to think she had what it took to become a high priest. Akagami, who had regained consciousness, wanted to offer his kidney to the monk as he begged him to reconsider, and Kijo, who was curious as to why the broke slave wanted to save a temple that he owed 20 million yen, decided to have an impromptu vow reading for Akagami and Yuzuki. After seeing that the otaku was determined in his cause, he accepted the offer but only gave her the privilege of using his name to keep the temple open. After they got to the closed train station and Akagami noticed that she was injured due to running around in her geta, he used the opportunity to get a room at a love hotel. While he bathed in the washroom and fought hard against his inner voices and intrusive thoughts, Yuzuki, who happened to be an even more closeted otaku, fried her dopamine sensors with hub videos until he came out.
Nice.
When he saw what she was watching, and realized that she was far more dangerous than anything he had ever encountered or clapped, he cuffed himself to an X-Cross and waited for her to use him as she pleased, but she seemed to have already taken care of herself while bathing, and walked right past him after getting out of the shower. After the weirdos got back from their night of evil, they pretended to have spent the night in spiritual studies to avoid getting caught by Tsukuyo, who met them at the door. While heading to the school that morning, Tsukuyo told her sister that they had to keep Akagami a secret while in school since the idea of nuns living with Japan's greatest otaku wasn't exactly good for business. After getting to class, she was thinking about how her sister, who used to be an arrow-shooting baddie, was now a closeted creep when her friends Mana and Yuki came to ask her about the rumor they heard of a kiss between her and a certain red-haired gentleman. Knowing that such rumors would ruin her reputation, she denied the allegations, and the girls reminded her that she was actually famous in school for being the Mega Melon princess of the Aoba family, which meant that all the boys had an eye on her and wouldn't want to find out about such an affair. She almost lost it when she saw Akagami outside the window and made it in time to knock him out before he could reveal her secrets. After getting him to the nurse's office, he explained that he came to deliver her lunch and was about to leave when her friends came looking, so she forced the otaku to hide in between her drumsticks while she pretended to be sick. But when Yuki noticed that her legs were abnormally long and tried to see them, she pulled him into her holy bosom and cut off his airflow. While her friends asked her about her absence from the archery club, he decided to enjoy the moment and took a bite of the melon before the girls left. Avoiding the crime he had committed on school grounds, he asked her about the archery club and she claimed that she had taken a break. Later on, while cleaning at the temple, he saw Yuzuki with a bow and asked her about the archery club, which she said that she had quit to focus on saving the temple. The next day, Tsukuyo caught him peeping through the window and dragged him in for a beating, but he once again used the archery thing to hide his true intentions, and she left, clearly trying to avoid talking about the topic. Later on, she ended up going to the archery club and ran away when she saw that he was stalking her, but she ultimately gave up on running, and they both sat by the river where she explained that she only picked up the sport because Yuzuki started it first. While she enjoyed it after Yuzuki quit the club, she also stopped because she felt that it was wrong for her to have fun while her sister was sacrificing for their temple. Akagami then dragged her back to the temple and showed her that Yuzuki was still shooting arrows, although it was more of an occasional hobby she did at home. After watching her shoot with the rest of the girls, they found out that Yuzuki was a talentless wannabe, and the mental images Tsukuyo had about her was born out of pure psychosis and depravity, which seemed to be a regular thing for the sisters. That night, she got her revenge on the Peeping Tom and rejoined the archery club the next day. Aoba Kurage, who appeared to be a normal kid but was harboring plans of evil for the otaku, finished making her daily journal entry and went to meet her sisters, who had called for a temple meeting. Yuzuki had broken the weight scale after having a shower and communicated her recent spike in obesity with the rest of the girls, who all had the same issue. They knew the source of their problems was Akagami, who was whipping up Gordon Ramsay-level dishes to get his harem of nuns to fill up their frames, but they needed to find a way to fix their shared problem without having to quit their obsession with his food. Mia suggested adding protein to their meals, but they were too poor to afford such luxuries, so they ended up agreeing to start working out. But after a day of enduring the pain of exercise and getting served a plate of Japanese sweets by the master chef, they decided to let nature run its course, and Courage revealed that she was prepared to sacrifice her sisters to keep getting fed by Akagami and was ready to get married to him if that was an available option. While the chef did his housewife duties, Yuzuki asked him to make her some pickled radishes and left after getting an axe. The terrified otaku thought she had finally gotten fed up with his pathetic existence and was prepping for his execution, so he made made her the best pickled radishes, hoping to sway her heart. But when she ate them with anger in her eyes, he accepted his fate and walked along the corridors in fear until he ran into her. He then found out that she was actually being trained by Kiki, who was getting her accustomed to the ways of a high priest. Seeing that he liked the routine, Kiki decided to let him join the training, and Yuzuki was excited until Mia came out and also joined them. After getting home and finding out that Takudo, which was what their training was called, was actually how people became priests, Akagami, who thought that simply wearing a robe all day was all he needed to be pure, had a mental episode and felt better when Kiki sandwiched him between her plots to help him master control over his demons. He then decided to ditch Mia and join Yuzuki in her training, but they were interrupted by Kijo, who decided to randomly pop in and see his fiancée. And while they all peeped through the blinds trying to figure out why he was there, Karaj told them that it was likely to have an adult experience, and that comment made the already jealous otaku to start tweaking. Kijo then invited him into their meeting, where Kiki, who had switched personalities, told him that she was going to make Yuzuki a priest in 6 months, but he was there to tell them that he was going to call off the engagement if they couldn't do it in 3 months. The next day, Kiki, who was still under the control of her alter ego, assembled them to start their Takudo training. Before they started, she told them to each change their undergarments to white, but since Mia and Akagami had a more special color taste, she made them go commando and started off with a meditation training that Akagami, who couldn't find Zen due to the melons by his side, failed after barely a couple of minutes. He seemed to have found some sanity in calligraphy and was doing well until he took a glance at Mia and spilled the ink on his special sword. Yuzuki, who walked in as Mia was about to clean him up, gave him a very brutal beating as punishment. By the end of that day, they had accomplished nothing and made up for slowing Yuzuki down by getting the white undergarments. When they got back, Kiki laid out a futon for the 3 disciples to share, and the next day, after getting no sleep, Kiki locked them inside a hot sauna so they could face their demons together. After a couple of minutes in the heat, Mia started off by talking about how she was up all night drooling over Akagami's Adam's apple, and Akagami had spent the entire night fighting to get his charged swords to relax. When they asked Yuzuki for the demons she had battled, the closeted creepshow, who had spent weeks fantasizing about Akagami's sword, pretended to be a saint who only thought about her divine purpose. But after they got back and shared their results with Kiki, she told them that Yuzuki was the most unholy otaku amongst the 3 of them. After another couple of days of training, she gave them the next afternoon off to regain their strength. Yuzuki, who noticed that Akagami wasn't happy about the day off, asked him about it, and he told her about how his dad always had a battle royale with all his concubines on that day, which happened to be Christmas Eve, and the trauma over the years had made him hate that day. So she decided to take him gift shopping. After the usual battle with his demons, he somehow survived their shopping date that led them to a Buddhist gift store run by the family of Yuzuki's friend from school named Mari. After Mari almost exposed all the effort she had put in to look good for Akagami, Yuzuki paid for a shirt and left with the less traumatized creepshow. Back at the nunnery, the girls were talking about how they had all grown to be a bit different, which was all thanks to Akagami. But Kagura, who seemed to have a different opinion, wanted the Rizzless creep gone. It was finally Christmas, and the girls were excited to finally get the chance to have a party at the temple, while Akagami was looking forward to stuffing their bellies and giving Yuzuki a gift. After kicking off the celebrations, they went to eat what they thought was Akagami's regular broccoli-stuffed meals, but somehow he had managed to make them a Thanksgiving-type dinner after probably robbing a grocery store. The girls, who couldn't remember when last they had tasted meat, immediately devoured it, and Courage made the clueless chef agree to marriage. Next was the gift sharing, which was what he was actually looking forward to, but unlike what he was used to, they mixed up their gifts and picked at random. Tsukuyo got a special vibrating toy from Yuzuki. Karaji made her sisters worried when they saw a marriage certificate to Akagami in one of the boxes, and Kagura gave Akagami a special CD containing specially edited images of Mia that Yuzuki had to retrieve from the otaku, who was already bleeding from a sudden dopamine high. Kagura claimed that it was a joke and showed them the actual gift, which was a bunch of passes to a hot springs. After saying their prayers to their taped-up idol, Akagami and Yuzuki exchanged the gifts they had gotten each other, and it turned out to be prayer beads they had gotten from Marie's store at different times. Remembering that prayer beads were their culture's form of wedding rings, the couple turned bright red, but their awkward Christmas marriage was put on hold when Kiki came to tell them that Yuzuki's Tokudo ceremony had a problem. The ceremony was traditionally held at the Temple of the Prospect, and if the temple was not in proper condition, it would get called off. This was likely going to be the case for them, as their backwater temple with a duct-taped Buddha statue was definitely not going to make the cut. At the hot springs, they were all oblivious to the fact that Kagura was getting worshipped by the inn staff and immediately went to get changed. Akagami was given a complimentary drink that was spiked with something before he went into the springs, and Courage, who was watching her sisters flex their temple muscles, pounced on Tsukuyo and tried to tear off her growing melons. They all got into the springs and fangirled over Mia, who actually looked less psychotic with her hair down. Even Kiki, who had the largest melons in the group, couldn't resist the urge to attack Mia's plot. When they asked about Kagura and why she had an addiction to filming them, Mia told them how Kagura was the only one that stuck by her side when the world labeled her as a psych ward escapee, and claimed that her best friend, the creepy videographer, would never betray her. Akagami, who was hiding in the bushes, tried to escape so they wouldn't see him peeping with his very active sword, but Kagura, who had set up the whole thing, exposed him. After her plan to expose him failed miserably, she hung back and followed him into the indoor springs where he was still trying to control his sword. She tried to get him to lose control, but he decided to crack his own eggplant instead, and Kagura, who was getting fed up, told him that he was in the way of her ultimate mission to turn Mia into the greatest clapper in the Kristoff family. Before she could continue her games, Mia saw her from the blinds, and she resorted to hypnosis to knock both Mia and Akagami out. When he woke up, Kagura revealed that she was from the Baldwin family dedicated to serving the Kristoffs, and her mission was to get Mia to live up to the family name. In exchange for him leaving the temple and Mia forever, she offered to pay off his debt and fix up the temple. The next day, Yuzuki left the girls and Akagami to handle the annual mochi pounding. After Tsukuyo's melons made his eyes bleed, he washed up and ran away from the Aoba group after Courage started being bolder with her abnormal plot-related statements. He went to help Kagura and Mia and saw the creepshow princess in a rabbit costume that Kagura claimed was a part of the mochi tradition. After Yuzuki came back and saw Akagami bouncing the rabbit girl off his sword, and her sister also following in their psychotic footsteps, she nearly tore his face off and told them that the bunny penance Kagura had taught them was not real. Later that day, he made them miso soup and shared a drink with Kiki, who was going to leave the temple after Yuzuki's ceremony and wanted to take him with her. On New Year's Day, they all got dressed up in kimonos and went into town, where the creepshow managed to scare them all away by saying the most out-of-pocket things with a certain level of delusional confidence. The only one that kept talking to him after his verbal abuse was Yuzuki, who was simply happy to be with him and the girls and was looking forward to taking over the temple. Hearing her talk about them seemed to spring up something in him as he ran off to find Kagura, who was back at the temple thinking about her origin story. Kagura was assigned the mission of serving Mia Kristoff and guiding her to her divine purpose as a royal clapping addict. But after getting to know that Mia was a deluded fool who hated her family, she eventually met with Mia's mother to discuss the plan to bring her to Japan. She was granted permission on the condition that Mia was to clap 100 men in Japan. Kagura was also made to send proof of the activities through pictures every 3 days, and seeing as Mia was an unclappable geek, she had been editing the images she was taking to keep Mia's mum from getting involved. When Akagami finally got to her, he told her that he had decided to turn down the offer and wanted to do things the right way to keep his promise to Mia. Hearing this pissed off the creepy videographer, who knew that Mia liked him and would get her heartbroken because he liked Yuzuki. As he started yapping about how she was displaying her emotions and concern for Mia, she destroyed his eggplant and left him paralyzed with pain to meet up with Mia. The next morning, the nutless otaku woke up enlightened and met Mia, who noticed that he was having panic attacks every time he heard Kagura's name. To solve the problem, she took him and Kagura to the storage shed and locked them in to induce friendship. But he was too traumatized to even go near her when she tried to tease him, and his lack of an eggplant made it easier for him to control his desires. After thinking about his offer to be her friend, Kagura knocked down the door of the shed with a new mission to make him fall for Mia. Meanwhile, Tsukuyo woke up from a dream where she was exchanging water fluids with Akagami, and promised to get Courage a chocolate parfait as an apology for almost assaulting her. While staring at Akagami and noticing that he was weirdly close with Mia, Kagura showed her a video of Akagami clapping her, and she immediately summoned Mia for a questioning session where she wanted to know what the princess felt for Akagami. After the anti-clapping princess told them about her addiction to the daily creepshow activities she did with Akagami, they tied her up with the bondage set Christian Grey used in 50 Shades. When Akagami came into the room and freaked out, she decided to use the opportunity to question him as well. But as the video evidence had somehow ended up in Karage's hands, she thought she had finally destroyed her sister's purity. Karage revealed that Akagami and Mia were only playing a game in the video, and it was Tsukuyo's dopamine-fried brain that had impaired her vision and reasoning. The reality of their poverty didn't really set in until Akagami realized that their rice had finished when he tried to make dinner, but Yuzuki told the terrified Brokey to relax, as they had annual tributes to collect from the locals who used the temple's plots of land and gave them rice as a form of gratitude payment. After spending the entire day knocking on doors and getting nothing, they went to see a lady with 2 kids who had the same brain frequency as Akagami and ran around trying to get under Mia's yukata. Their mom knew Tsukina, Yuzuki's mom, who was feared by the locals when she was in charge of the temple, but was now rumored to be living in the city's main temple. Due to the relationship she had with Yuzuki's mom, she gave them her countless bales of rice that gave Akagami a brief deja vu. They left after Yuzuki somehow carried all the bales on her back, while Akagami struggled with one and Mia served as a cheerleader. For Yuzuki's Takudo ceremony to be a success, they had to fix up the temple's principal figure that was barely hanging on thanks to their duct tape. Kiki had already done her research and estimated the repair cost to be around 500,000 yen, which was an absurd amount of money for them to raise in such a short period of time. But Yuzuki, who seemed to have finally lost her sanity, told them that she would figure something out. Akagami, who was looking for available jobs to support fundraising for the principal figure's repair, realized that he needed a phone. Since he smashed his last one, he went to borrow one from Yuzuki, who was casually cosplaying as a maid by herself, and after his nose started leaking again, he had to knock himself back to reality so he could ask her for the phone and her phone number. When she realized what he was planning, she took the phone back and told him to stick to life as a dishwasher, as she was going to take on the challenge of raising 500,000 yen on her own by taking on 5 to 6 jobs at once. After having to look away from her to continue their argument, he couldn't hold back and told her that her outfit was doing things to him that even he couldn't understand. Yuzuki, who didn't realize that she was playing dress-up, explained that a friend had given her the clothes so she could test it out for a job as a medieval times Hooters maid, and she had fallen asleep while wearing it and searching for more jobs. Hearing this proved his point about the wannabe feminist being too incompetent and delusional to make up to 500,000 yen on her own. But she wasn't backing down, so they agreed to a competition where he would try to get her to fall asleep, and if he succeeded, she would accept his advice. Knowing that his desires would be on overdrive, he steeled his mind and went to work on the deluded feminist. Tsukuyo, who was passing by, heard voices from her sister's room that terrified her, so she stormed in and saw Yuzuki getting her spine cracked by Akagami the chiropractor. Before Yuzuki could explain the situation to her sister, she started to drift in between consciousness and Akagami claimed victory. But she was still hell-bent on her solo mission and told the dishwasher to mind his business. Feeling the burn from what she said, he asked Tsukuyo out and stormed out of the room, leaving the delusional overthinker to spend the rest of the night fantasizing about marriage and other related activities. The next day, she put on her best outfit and a pair of brand new Saint Laurent boots for her date. But the clueless nerd who wore his usual work clothes told her that they were just going to get him a new phone. Knowing that she felt embarrassed for going overboard with her outfit choice, he gave her a compliment, and that was enough to keep her mental health in check. After paying for the phone and getting back home, she gave him her contact details, and he revealed that she was the first female to even give him her number, as his reputation as a diabolical creep made everything with a skirt run from him. When he told her that he had bought the phone for top secret communication, she started another series of very vivid, delusional dreams about some illicit affair that would get him arrested in the real world since she was still a minor. Earlier that evening, Yuzuki, who couldn't stop thinking about her harshness to Akagami, had decided to apologize to him and squash the beef. But after seeing him with Tsukuyo, her legs developed a mind of their own and ran away. The next day, Akagami, who was struggling to find a job hunting site, was also thinking about their beef and decided to make up. But after running into her and watching her pathetic attempt at being a stoic Sigma,
What?
he was pulled aside by Kiki, who used her melons and the moon to give him a quick course on the art of being in love. Her counseling session stopped halfway when Karaj told her that a guest had come requesting to leave the temple. As she ran to meet the deserter, she explained to Akagami that when temple members left and requested the removal of the family graves, they usually paid a fee which she planned to exploit and use to make a quick bag. But when she got there, they had already left, and Yuzuki told them that she didn't take any fee from them, as she was more focused on the emotional damage she felt from her temple being abandoned by the very people that stuck with them when her mom was in charge. She tried to give herself motivation to keep pushing and working for the temple and its supporters, but Kiki, who was done with her childishness and delusion, decided to stop her training and left without telling them why. The next day, Yuzuki woke up and decided to find other things to do around the temple, but Akagami had already taken care of everything, and when she asked for him, Tsukuyo told her that he had gone out with Kiki. While the rest of the girls started a mini riot over who had rights to Akagami's phone number, Yuzuki went to find something to do with her free time. But like they told her earlier, Akagami, the top-ranking beta male, had already taken care of everything. So she went into town and tried solving her growing anxiety with meaningless tasks and a lousy attempt to step out of her comfort zone, which ultimately ended in even more sadness. Meanwhile, Akagami was discarding the ounces of dignity he had left by begging Kiki to take Yuzuki back into training, but she wasn't budging and decided to leave him as he was starting to spread his lack of self-respect to her. He then got a call from Tsukuyo about Yuzuki, who had gone missing, and ran off into the rain to look for her. But after looking through the town and going to meet the people they had visited together, he couldn't find her and suddenly remembered the only other place where she might be. Yuzuki, who was holed up in Akagami's cardboard house under the bridge, was thinking about her mom, who had randomly decided to shut down the temple one day. She told her mom that she would take over the temple, but her mom said she couldn't save it, which was how her anxiety and pursuit of perfection started. She felt that if she got better and trained a lot harder, she would be good enough to save the temple and make everyone trust her. But with everything going south, it seemed like she was going way off course. Akagami, who finally found her under the bridge, finally understood that under the permanent smile and confidence she always showed them, she was anxious and scared. So he gave her a hug to make her feel better. The next day, she found out that she had caught a fever and woke Akagami, who had slept off at her bedside after taking care of her throughout the night. After they apologized to each other about the fight and finally made up, the rest of the girls who were eavesdropping on them came in and scolded her for making them worried. She then met with Kiki and asked her to train her again, as she had finally realized that she was wrong to chase perfection. She later explained to Akagami that she was done trying to save the temple by herself and was going to get help and assistance from their supporters. So the next day, after the girls all gave him the traditional greeting, she set out with Kiki and the others to meet with their supporters, while Akagami stayed back to fulfill his destiny as the dishwashing otaku monk.